Welcome back. Milwaukee's closely watched mayoral primary is just more than a week away. Early voting is underway now. 7 candidates are vying for the top 2 spots to advance to the April general election. Some of the candidates are now up on TV in the Milwaukee market, and they all know how critical those relationships are with state lawmakers. Upfront executive producer and political correspondent Matt Smith recently grabbed a cup of coffee with the candidates.
I want to ask you about the relationship with the state. Former Mayor Barrett said he hopes maybe a new face and a new mayor will help strengthen that relationship between lawmakers at the Capitol. Curious on that relationship. I mean, there's a couple big issues, right? So what would you do differently in terms of changing the shared revenue formula and convincing lawmakers to let Milwaukee County ask to raise the sales tax?
Well, Milwaukee is a value added to the state of Wisconsin, and I think that it's important for folks to understand. I have said, and I'm committed to having a cot in the Capitol, working day in and day out with legislators in order to show them the value added for Milwaukee, and also to explain to them the fiscal challenges that the city of Milwaukee has.
It may take some arm twisting of some Republicans.
Well, yes and no. I think I have a very good relationship with a number of the Republicans in the legislature. I've sat down with them and they recognize that under the right leadership, Milwaukee can and will address these challenges. I think that's sort of been a concern on their part for many years. I believe in the conversations I have had with key legislators, including Senator Kayanga and so on, they recognize the fact that Milwaukee does need help. They want to help. I'm convinced of that if we are able to put together an initiative to address these things that make sense for all of us.
So the first thing I want to say is I think a sales tax is putting a Band-Aid on cancer. When I looked at it when the former administration brought it and I was on finance and potentially the person to advocate for it, what we found is that in 5 years the pension crisis was going to eat it all up. So it's not going to be a solution. So we really have to look at the budgetary issues, I think, in a greater degree. And we have to be transparent, I think, with our colleagues in Madison.
How would you make that pitch and how would that be different to accomplish some of those to get more money to the city?
I consider myself a moderate. I think I can play both sides of the fence. Like, I've been to galas in DC on the Republican side. I've been to a lot of Democratic events. Robin Foss went to Whitewater. I'm a war hawk. Let's just sit down and talk about these things. Like, you have to have a common sense approach from a middle standpoint and be able to see both sides.
How do you have those conversations with lawmakers in Madison?
First of all, the city is a creature of the state, and so it's like the parent of the state. We have to negotiate. We have to come to some type of conclusion. So I definitely will utilize the tools that we already have, and then try to always look at expanding what resources we can get. There's always money available. It's all about where we can tap into it to utilize those things.
How do you make that case and how do you make that new case to begin those conversations and move them forward beyond where they are right now?
Well, I think certainly as one who has had experience managing people, managing budgets, and also dealing in communities all across the country in my time at Major League Baseball, I know the importance of relationships. Relationships are very important, and I've already have developed relationships here with some of the legislators in Madison. I'm ready to work with both sides of the aisle. So how do we get everybody to the table? I think, again, the mayor has to be able to go to Madison and speak with the legislator, bring other voices from Madison, whether it's the business community, the philanthropic community, certainly the community at large and others, to the table. Let's have this robust discussion and dialogue about what we can do so that Milwaukee can get more revenue here in the city. And I'm certain that there'll be ears that'll be attentive to listening to new ideas and, as you indicated, to new faces as well.
I know local government needs, and a lot of that depends on federal and state funding. I'm not asking for anything we don't deserve or anything more than other people, but Milwaukee is the economic engine of the state of Wisconsin, and we do deserve our fair share. Think of all the people that came and enjoyed the Bucks championship. If we could have just got a penny or a half a penny on those beers or food, that could have really helped our infrastructure in the city. So I'm not sure if it's a new face. I mean, there might be new faces in the Republican Party too, but I think it's a new tactic.
If neither of those come through, at least in the short term, what happens with the pension crisis and how does the city deal with that?
Well, it is a crisis. It's ballooning, and in 1 to 3 years, we will have to cut many city services, fire, police, trash collection, I mean, you name it, street repairs. It's devastating. And so we do need help, we need assistance, and we need those local revenue options. I've also called for the full legalization of marijuana, including revenue that could be taxed on that. I think that should be part of the mix, including a sales tax.
I think we have to bring in new industry or new revenue. And I think that we do that through one of the things that I know I've been championing, and it feels like almost a decade now, which is urban agriculture. It is growing globally.
You're not going to rely solely on the state then?
I can't solely rely on the state or federal dollars that are one-time dollars. I have to make whatever dollars we get make money for us, is what I like to say.
If shared revenue or sales tax doesn't come through in the near future, how do you address the pension crisis?
Well, so in the first tranche of ARPA funds that the city received, $197 million, I was the architect working to do basically what was an accounting trick to swap out some city tax levy dollars for ARPA funds that we could pay for. And doing that, it allowed for us to take those more fungible city tax levy dollars to pad the pension. It also buys us time to continue to work with the state, building on the relationships we talked about earlier, to find the solutions necessary to address the issue long term.
Our thanks to Anodyne Coffee in Milwaukee for hosting Matt and the candidates. In-person early voting continues tomorrow. The city also has 15 ballot drop boxes that are open after the state Supreme Court's recent ruling ensured they could be used at least through the February 15th primary. Coming up, is the RNC coming to Wisconsin? The Milwaukee delegation just back from Salt Lake City after making their private pitch. We're getting the inside scoop next.